statement there, okay, that to try to understand what sin is, one must first recognize the profound relation of man to God. For only in this relationship is the evil of sin unmasked in its true identity as humanity's rejection of God and opposition to Him, even as it continues to weigh heavy on human life and history. Why would a human being reject God and oppose Him?
Because the devil tempts him.
Why would a human being reject all this and be opposed to it? And these are not like, we are talking about things which are abstract. Again, we always go back like to the sin of abortion. A deliberate elimination of human beings. Or sometimes in what we call genocides, okay? But those don't occur that often as abortion is. So, why would anybody be opposed to life? A living human being who is experiencing the gift and wonder of life. Why would a person be opposed to it?
It's not convenient.
Because of selfishness.
Selfishness.
The question is, where does that come from?
Lack of knowledge.
From them wanting to be God.
Where does that come from? Just to keep that in mind, where does that come from? It has to come from somewhere. Our opposition to God and our rejection of Him has to come from somewhere. Okay? So keep that in mind. Where does it come from? Okay. So 387. Only the light of divine revelation clarifies the reality of sin, and particularly of the sin committed at humankind's origins. Without the knowledge revelation gives of God, we cannot recognize sin clearly and are tempted to explain it as merely a developmental flaw, a psychological weakness, a mistake, or the necessary consequence of an inadequate social structure, etc. Hence, many people today, including many Catholics, okay, when they are confronted by this reality of sin, with the reality of sin, what do? They go to psychologists. My marriage is failing. My children are rebellious. They need psychological counseling. Some may need it, okay? We acknowledge psychological diseases, they are there. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, most of the things we experience are a result of our sinfulness. So to go to a psychologist and confess without receiving absolution,
He's not, well, yes, he is.
Just the bill.
okay, yeah, you pay.
Yeah. Twice.
Okay? You pay to confess your sins, and you're not absolved. Okay? So today there is that attempt. I think some of you watch this so-called History Channel, the Science Channel. Sometimes, especially during Christmas time and Easter time, they have so-called religious, programs. Okay? But one of them is about the 7 deadly sins. Okay? And they explain it as a psychological flaw. Okay? Something inadequate. Basically, to overcome what we call the 7 deadly sins. What are they? Pride is number 1, right? The root cause of everything.
Pride, sloth, gluttony.
Gluttony, sloth,
Envy,
Envy, all those. So to overcome those, you just need psychological counseling. Because they are really psychological disorders. All mistakes we make. Okay? But don't say they are sins. So it's so revelation gives the revelation, okay, gives of God flaw. Okay, so we say without the knowledge of revelation, Without the knowledge revelation gives of God, we cannot recognize sin clearly and are tempted to explain it as merely a developmental flaw. So without God, without Christ, without this revelation, we wallow in our confusion. So we call sin a developmental flaw. Okay? It's like a stage in our evolutionary process, some would say. So just leave it to evolution, okay? Then when we reach that stage, we will evolve and outgrow the stage of sin. But don't say it came from somewhere, don't say it comes from the devil. Just to think about that briefly, the atheists, suggest, propound this argument. If sin, what we call sin, is simply a flaw within the evolutionary process, okay? Why do we have the law, especially penal laws? If I do evil, it's not my fault. We haven't yet evolved to the stage whereby we'll overcome this. Why do you punish me for a process of evolution I have no control over?
That's a good argument.
Why do you put me in jail? I'm evolving.
No understanding.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Yes.
I can't hasten evolution, right? Can I? If it is truly evolution, okay, as atheists presented in what we call atheistic evolution, if that's what it is, why are you putting me in jail? You see those contradictions. I'm not responsible for this particular stage of evolution. And I shouldn't be punished for it. Because I am not evolution. I'm just a product of chance, which happened to be here at this material time, okay, at this material stage of evolution. It's not my fault. If you want to put anything in jail, put evolution in jail. Not me. So you see the stupidity, okay, of those arguments. We won't have any laws. We don't need the police. People are simply evolving. If I kill somebody, well, it's the animal kind of thing still in me, but don't worry about it. I'm evolving. So it's merely a developmental flaw, a psychological weakness, a mistake. You lie and you say, I misspoke. It's a mistake. Or the necessary consequence of an inadequate social structure. Our social structures are not advanced yet, okay? So we'll keep going. Don't worry about it. We will overcome all these social ills through social engineering.
That's what they're going to. Perfect human being.
So we are going to overcome sin, what we call sin, through social engineering and technology. But we have to face the reality that a person can have the latest technological gadget and they do something Stone Age man did. In fact, someone can use the most sophisticated technological instrument today to kill somebody else. It doesn't mean that the act is now advanced, okay? Murder 5,000 years ago is different from today because we are technologically advanced. No, it's the same sinful tendency in us that produces this evil. Technology will not help. So only in the knowledge of God's plan for man can we grasp that sin is an abuse of the freedom that God gives to created persons so that they are capable of loving Him and loving one another. So look at that statement again. So only in the knowledge of God's plan for man. God has a plan for us. God is not arbitrary. He didn't just create. And then he said, oops, what do I do now? He has a plan from the very beginning. He created because he had a plan for us. Okay? So only in knowledge of that plan for man can we grasp that sin is an abuse. So what is the original plan of God for us? So that we may know that sin is an abuse is what we've been looking at. Okay? Before the fall. That is the original plan of God. To be in a loving covenant communion with us forever, receiving goodness, life, love, wisdom from him constantly. That's what we mean by communion. Communion of life. Okay? Receiving life from him. That is his plan. So when we reject and rebel against him, that's how we come to know where sin comes from. Okay? So in knowledge of that plan, can we grasp the sin, that sin is an abuse of the freedom that God gives to created persons. That freedom is given so that they are capable of loving him and of loving one another. So once we abuse that freedom, then we become incapable of loving God and our neighbor. That's where sin comes from. That is the deepest source of human sin. The abuse of the gift of freedom. So sin is an abuse of a gift. It doesn't mean that the gift is bad because it is abused. That's what, hence the statement we started with, that everything God created is good. But why do we abuse the gift? How is it possible for humans to abuse the gift? Again, that question keeps basically coming up. You see that? Okay. How did we abuse the gift? Adam and Eve were created in a state of original justice, full of sanctifying grace. Why did they rebel against God and reject him? Where does temptation come from? You see, how do they abuse the gift?
Why was temptation allowed?
Okay, so let's take a break.
Susie, what? Yeah, I guess so. Must be unavailable.
What you're saying is correct. Except what you're saying is totally correct. And I look at it, it was a plan of God. It is finite kind of situation.